de cela. And now, the event I've been waiting for. I don't know about you. C'est la partie que j'attends avec d'impatience. Our panel discussion and the topic today will be prevention of prejudice, promulgating positive. Donc, prévenir les préjugés et répandre le positivisme. Alors, nous avons plusieurs panélistes, and as I read out your bio, I'll have you come up and pick your spot on the stage. We first have Elder Verna McGregor, who I already introduced. I'm not going to go over her bio again. Welcome to the stage, Elder Verna. Next, we have His Excellency David L. Cohen. Before becoming U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Mr. Cohen was Senior Executive Vice President at Comcast, handling corporate communications, legal affairs, government and regulatory affairs, public affairs, and much more. He also served as the company's first Chief Diversity Officer. I want you to keep that in mind when he's going to be speaking. He has also served on many nonprofit boards, including the National Urban League and Midos US. Welcome, Your Excellency. The next panelist you're going to hear will be a video. He was unable to be physically with us, so he pre-recorded his presentation. Daljit Irman is a seasoned legal expert and visiting professor with over 30 years in the field. He has worked on police governance, notably as a member of the Armed Police Services Board, where he advocated for transparency and evidence standards. He's being recognized for his advocacy in community service, including induction into the Order of Ottawa. Gypsy is also a member of the Order of Ottawa, I believe. Next, we have Dr. Gautam Ghosh. Dr. Ghosh has dedicated his career to advancing justice, education, and cross-cultural understanding worldwide. A legal expert, author, and social entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience, specializing in constitutional law, human rights, and criminal law. He is the CEO of Upper Chambers, an international law firm. He's also an occasional lecturer who was the founding chairman of an innovative educational institution in India, and his contributions extend beyond the legal and academic fields to community roles, such as General Secretary of the India-Canada Consortium and member of the World Multicultural Festival in Canada. Welcome, Dr. Ghosh. The next one I'm doing in French, puisqu'elle est francophone, donc je vais parler d'elle en français. Fatia Ouchnebne a débuté sa carrière en 1994 dans le Sahara algérien en tant qu'attaché de recherche et de conservation du patrimoine archéologique et culturel à Accra. Fatia a été aussi, pendant 10 ans, journaliste culturelle à une des radios nationales algériennes. Elle a aussi travaillé à l'Agence nationale d'archéologie à Alger, au poste de chef de département de l'inventaire archéologique d'Algérie, puis au ministère de la Culture, à la direction de la préservation, de la conservation du patrimoine matériel et immatériel. So Fatiha, just to summarize, is a specialist in the preservation of Algerian cultural heritage. She's an anthropologist and she's also a journalist. And last but not least, we have Dr. Fahdou Massaili, who is a retired professor of political science, specializing in international law and relations. He's the founder and executive director of Alternative Perspectives in Global Concerns. His fields of interest are, of course, international law, human rights, ethics, and political philosophy. He's the author of several dozen books on topics like ethics of duty, faith and democracy, human rights theory. He's organized many international conferences around the world. He's a sought-after speaker who's presented in many seminars, workshops. He's written many articles. And he also speaks regularly on an Iranian TV outlet in California. Dr. Asai. So everybody's here. And I'd like to mention that Professor Omiyasu Wapasi is unwell, and so was unable to join us. And also that our Colombian representative, Marcela Martinez, was unable to join us because she was also unwell. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go in the following order. We're going to start. So the way this is going to work, each of our panelists has about 5 minutes to do a presentation, and then I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we'll close out with closing comments. Good? So we'll start with Elder Verna McGregor. Please go ahead.
Okay, so
You'll have to put your mic a little closer.
closer? Good enough? Okay. The topic of prevention of prejudice, promulgating positivism. I think about that a lot because I do a lot of talks lately with the federal government, and I talk a lot about the native understanding and the non-native understanding, and there's still a difference there. And again, but also to as well, having gone through a number of events connected to racism, I think one of the biggest answers to this is also, I always think it's education. It's learning about our differences too as well in other cultures, other nations, and also though too as well, and providing that as Matthew just mentioned too as well, what divides us, but also which breeds the racism, but also what unites us. And again, too, that's why I was include that in my opening. But for us too, here in Canada, I say I'm very honored to be here today too as well. People don't realize our history of really oppression. And for us as Algonquin, we were one of the first to meet a lot of the explorers. And again, too, as well, it was this clash of understanding. And prior to contact, yes, we were nomadic, but we also had our system of trade. And it was a different understanding, but also we had our own creation stories. So it's sharing that also brings understanding. And as I mentioned earlier too as well, we still have our original wampum belts, which are made out of cobalt and milk. And one of them is a 7-fire prophecy belt. We also have the Jade Treaty belt and the Sharon belt of 1701. And again, too, by meeting the explorers here, the evolution of colonialism, that was the start of also racism. And few people know that at one time you had to be franchised, you can give up who you are to go to attend college and university. You weren't allowed to also hire a lawyer. And that started also while they were taking away the kids off to residential school. But also the impression started before that is also we didn't understand that there were also Indian hunters here as well. So it's all that history that they call reconciliation. And even to the hiring practices today, we are playing catch up with this education system because, again, we weren't allowed to attend post-secondary education. It was only in the 1960s that we started going back to school, or were allowed to go to school. So it's that understanding but at the same time, there was no funding, but part of the treaties, and we don't have a treaty, also guaranteed health care and education. So it's all that history coming back, and reconciliation is that understanding of the history of oppression, but we still get the racism who say, well, you get everything, you're asking for everything, but at the same time, it's understanding that this is just recently. But how does that have impact on today's issues? Now we're facing a worker crisis, worker shortage, and I was just on a conversation yesterday where they were talking about retention. When you have a government attrition, for example, that the average person, when they experience racism in the workplace, what they do is 95%, this used to be working in May, 95% of people just go away. Even when you're providing a service, you want to know if there's a problem, because the average person just takes the business elsewhere, doesn't say anything. Or if you're in a work environment, they leave the job. Only 5% actually raise an issue, because we're human, we all avoid conflict or don't enjoy conflict. So again too as well, and how do you overcome this racism? And because you don't want to be seen as a troublemaker in your workplace. So what do? You try and switch job, you try and go to another department, but again too, it's that understanding and bringing the issues forward of racism and how to address racism is through education and sharing cultures. Because when you share the cultures too as well, the cultural understanding, you realize you have certain issues or there's similarities there. An example is with me meeting, for example, Gypsy a couple of years ago. And just last year she told me, she mentioned, she goes, you know, Verna, why I bothered you so much in the last couple of years is that you did the water ceremony, and we do the water ceremony in the honoring of the sun and the moon in our country. So it's with that though too as well, it's that similarity. And then she said, well, I use a copper pail as well to bring the sun in the morning and honor the moon and honor the contrast. So, and that's what we do as well. So it's also, it's what unites us as opposed to what divides us. And sometimes division is created by ignorance, and ignorance is not knowing that we are all connected to as well, like this. So on that note, I'm going to close there real much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for reminding our audience about the ongoing reconciliation, le processus de réconciliation qui se poursuit, et l'importance de l'éducation et l'importance de partager les traditions qu'on a en commun, the traditions actually recognize as common things that we have. Ambassador Onyango.
So, good afternoon, everyone.
Sorry, before you continue. So, can we ask all the people who are at the kiosks if you could keep the volume down? Hello? Hello? Perfect. So if you can keep it at that level so we can hear everything. Please continue.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's an honor for me to be here today, to be with such a distinguished panel that has such a strong record around issues of multiculturalism and tolerance, and taking positions against hatred and divisiveness, which are issues that I've been passionate about. Start by saying that I'm incredibly proud to call my hometown Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Why do I say that? Because it's the birthplace of America and of American democracy, as well as the underlying values of democracy: freedom, equality, justice, inclusion, and tolerance, all of which are hallmarks of U.S. and Canadian society. Healthy democratic societies like ours require free flow of ideas and discussion, civil discourse. And like a family, no one will agree with everything their friends, neighbors, or other members of their society believe. But we should discuss our views and differing opinions in a respectful and civil manner. And that's what I saw walking around this room, what I see in this room. With all, as I said repeatedly, with all the problems we're having around the world, it is wonderful to walk into a room where there's so many countries, so many different cultures, so many people who look differently than I do. They look differently from each other. We're here sharing their cultures, sharing their backgrounds, sharing their nationalities with smiles on their faces. From this comes the type of togetherness and inclusiveness that we need more of in the world. Unlike this room, unfortunately, increasingly we have seen rising levels of hate speech and uncivility, of virulent and escalating anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, of intolerance, both in the United States and in Canada. Instead of participating in cordial conversations, people often choose to retreat to their corners, to hurl insults, to shut out or shout down anyone who opposes their ideas, opinions, or beliefs. In Canada, I see this in question period in Parliament, and I see it on the streets of Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, and in Vancouver. In particular, I see hate in the disturbing surge of anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim speech. Acts of violence in the United States, Canada, and around the world in the wake of the horrific terrorist attacks by Hamas on October 7 and the ensuing conflict in the Middle East. Today, Brith reports that Canada has experienced double the number of anti-Semitic incidents between 2022 and 2023. These have included firebombing of a synagogue and Jewish community center in Montreal, eggs from the Holocaust Memorial Monument in Calgary, a Jewish student being assaulted in British Columbia, and 2 shootings at a Jewish girls' elementary school in Toronto. The National Council of Canadian Muslims reports that incidents of anti-Islamic hate crimes haven't just increased, they've skyrocketed with new types of harassment, including intimidation at work, schools, and universities. We've also received reports of drivers spitting at people from car windows, individuals being pushed or verbally abused, and Muslims being harassed on social media. This intolerance and hate sickens me, and they are scary in their virulence. This is not what Canada and the United States stand for. So what can we do? I have a constructive suggestion. We must all, every one of us, without equivocation, denounce and condemn anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and any other form of hate whenever and wherever they raise their ugly heads. Each one of us has this responsibility. Is taking on hate and combating intolerance is all of our jobs. It's a responsibility that each one of us shares individually and collectively. As the Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel said, neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, President Biden said, silence is complicity. Acts of hate have no place in our countries and do not represent the democratic values we stand for. We can also all model civil discourse in our own lives. Earlier this year, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, Sarah and I held a conversation in a program co-sponsored by the Jewish and Muslim Law Student Associations of the University of Ottawa. At this event, we spoke about our shared commitment to strengthening democracy, creating inclusive societies, and being respectful and civil in our interactions with each other, even where we disagree. Against the backdrop of exploding acts of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, I believe that we, the Muslim Attorney General of Canada and Jewish U.S. Ambassador to Canada, are able to demonstrate the power of dialogue, the need for allyship, and it's okay to have difficult conversations. It's okay to disagree with each other. You don't have to hate. You don't have to engage in violence. You can disagree without being disagreeable. This festival and other events that bring the community together in civil discourse and that promote multiculturalism, inclusion, and tolerance is a perfect example of that type of modeling of behavior. And we need this now more than ever. We also need to uphold the values of justice, equality, and diversity that strengthen free societies. So in closing, I'd like to reference President Biden's remarks during the ceremonies commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day on the beaches of Normandy earlier this year. He said that we each have a personal responsibility to stand up for democracy and democratic values, and that includes standing up against hate. So thank you again for inviting me to join you here today, for me to have an opportunity to stand up for inclusion and civility and to unequivocally condemn hate in any form. Thanks for the opportunity to address you and
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that. And thanks for referencing D-Day, the 80th anniversary of D-Day. We're all wearing our poppies, most of us are, because Remembrance Day is coming up. This year was the 80th anniversary. And reminding us that in the political discourse especially, civility must come back. We have to hear each other, and we can, if we're not toning it down and actually hearing out the other person. Thank you so much. Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you. Namaskar. Thanks to my multicultural fraternity here. Thanks to the speaker.
Can I once again ask all the people at the kiosk if we could turn that volume down so we can hear over here? Thank you so much.
Thanks to Yasin Naqvi, the host, and my friend Monofodio, and all the distinguished guests out here. Well, I came with a write-up to tell, but before that, I myself found something. Now, while entering today, so we were carrying a microwave. So, we found the security guard telling us that, no, you can't take the microwave inside because we have a microwave. So Gypsy, who has done a lot of programs up here, knows that there is no microwave up here. So, someone even told us to just call the cab, and just return it back. So we say, no, it's not possible. And the last thing the last option that was there was to just throw it in the garbage. So then there was an officer who told, I think Gypsy told her that let's find it, whether there is a microwave. And now, after that, it was found that there is no microwave. So this is what is known as preconceived notion or prejudice, the topic word of today. So when we talk about prejudice, it means that we have a preconceived notion about something. It may be true, it may not be true, but we do not make an empirical study. Which we should today. Canada is a multicultural mosaic. There are a numerous number of people coming from all over the world. People should know each other, hear their stories, and then only there can be an equilibrium which a civil society demands. Otherwise, there will be conflict of opinion, clashes, as we have seen, as the Honorable U.S. Ambassador has just now told. Now, there are various reasons for this prejudice. Some of them are like ageism, discrimination against older individuals, classism based on social and economic class, homophobia, prejudice against LGBTQ, racism, discrimination based on race, sexism, prejudice of discrimination against women, transphobia, discrimination against transgender people. Xenophobia, fear or hostility towards immigrant or foreigners. One of the most important things, because Canada is an immigrant nation and there shouldn't be any misconception, prejudice against immigrants. Well, saying so, there are some steps which we can take to prevent this. We have to challenge the discrimination. We have to speak out against this discrimination. As today Gypsy did. Educate ourselves, that's one of the most important things. Because we may think the other person who is in front of us is prejudiced, but at the same time we may be prejudiced. So we need to educate ourselves. We need to engage in activism. That means we have to support movements for justice, equity, fraternity, liberty. And we have to recognize our own bias. We may be biased. We have to know that. Right? Now, to encourage positivism, there are many ways, like we have to do positive communication with different communities. We have to do critical thinking. We have to set an example. We have to set ourselves as an example. Cultivate community engagement, prioritize well-being, build positive media, because it's very important, because today's social media plays a very pivotal part in sending messages. It may transmit wrong message. Create safe space for growth, because each of you matter. Each of you is respected. We must respect each of you to live in a society. And we have to support all those public policy which is for good governance. In conclusion, the fight against prejudice and promotion of positivism are intertwined. Prejudice rooted in ignorance and fear is the enemy of unity, understanding and progress. But when we challenge prejudice, educate ourselves and embrace positivity, we create a society that is inclusive, fair, compassionate. By working together to eliminate harmful bias and cultivate a mindset of growth, empathy, fairness, we can build a more just and equitable society. Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roche, and thanks for reminding us that even people who are the victims of prejudice are prejudiced themselves. And it's important for them to recognize the prejudice in themselves and to open up their minds and to confront their own prejudice. Thank you very much for that. Alors, je pense que c'est en français. So the next presentation will be in French. And once again, can I ask the people at the kiosk to please turn that volume all the way down. Merci beaucoup. Madame.
Merci pour l'invitation. Je suis très contente de me retrouver aujourd'hui au sein d'une communauté diversifiée, pleine de cultures et pleine de mosaïques. Permettez-moi de vous présenter mes mots à travers cette présentation. Donc, La culture d'un peuple, c'est les gestes et les styles de vie appliqués dans une même société. La culture d'un peuple, c'est les gestes et les styles de vie appliqués dans une même société. Le Canada, pays d'accueil des communautés venant du monde entier. L'immigration a fait du Canada un pays de population diversifiée, riche en culture et en expérience, tous ensemble pour construire un seul pays, le Canada. Je fais partie de la communauté algérienne, très active et bien impliquée dans la société canadienne. Beaucoup d'associations algériennes mettent en place des activités scientifiques et culturelles pour le développement socio-économique et culturel du Canada. Le plus grand événement culturel organisé par la communauté algérienne au Canada est le Salon de la culture algérienne au Canada, qui accueille chaque année près de 3500 visiteurs qui viennent d'un peu partout du Canada et même des États-Unis. À travers les médias canadiens, nous faisons de la promotion de la culture algérienne et celle du Canada. Ici, on a fait la promotion du couscous algérien à travers une émission sur TV5. La communauté algérienne participe chaque année à des différentes festivités dans le cadre de multiculturalisme, entre autres le festival Afro-Monde, et nous participons aussi au festival Souk du Fruit. Nous faisons vivre notre culture à nos amis canadiens. Permettez-moi, mesdames et messieurs, de vous présenter un peu l'Algérie. On va faire un petit voyage et découvrir l'Algérie un peu à travers quelques aspects culturels. L'histoire, le patrimoine culturel de l'Algérie est lié directement avec son histoire qui commence par la préhistoire. Cette période de la préhistoire qui a mis en lumière le plus ancien site préhistorique au monde, celui de Ain Bouchri, daté de 1,9 million d'années. L'Antiquité algérienne est une longue période marquée essentiellement par la formation des royaumes berbères numides et c'est les premiers États algériens, l'arrivée aussi des Phéniciens, des Carthaginois, des Romains et aussi des Vandales et des Byzantins. Les plus importants sites antiques en Afrique du Nord se trouvent en Algérie. J'ai nommé la ville de Djemila, Tingad et Tipaza. Algérie arabe et musulmane. L'arabisation et l'islamisation de l'Algérie se fut en 670. La période ottomane, les Ottomans qui ont vécu en Algérie pendant 3 siècles, a commencé en 1518, la période où Alger, la capitale, devint une régence des Ottomans en Afrique du Nord. Période coloniale, l'Algérie a été colonisée par les Français de 1830 à 1962. Le passage de ces différents peuples en Algérie a fait que l'Algérie est le seul pays africain où il y a une diversité culturelle grandiose. Chaque ville, chaque oasis constitue un espace culturel particulier. Le dialecte algérien est unique en Afrique et la langue berbère est conservée cependant. L'Algérie est connue par une littérature et le théâtre et le cinéma de renommée internationale. L'architecture est variée en Algérie puisqu'elle est liée à l'histoire de l'Algérie. Nous avons l'architecture néo-mauresque qui est issue de l'époque ottomane. Nous avons également l'architecture de terre du Sahara et aussi l'architecture européenne issue de la période coloniale. L'Algérie recèle beaucoup de tenues traditionnelles qui sont liées avec à l'histoire de l'Algérie effectivement. Donc nous voyons ici plusieurs tenues traditionnelles qui caractérisent. Donc chaque région de l'Algérie a sa propre tenue traditionnelle. Et nous avons également plusieurs types de caftans. À gauche, nous regardons et nous observons, tout en admirant le plus ancien caftan algérien, qui est caftan le Kadi, qui est proposé pour le classement par l'UNESCO. À droite, nous avons la tenue traditionnelle de l'Ouest, qui a Chaque tenue traditionnelle d'Algérie se porte avec un type de bijoux. Nous avons une riche gastronomie, nous avons reçu plus de 1000 types de couscous algériens. Et bien sûr, chaque région d'Algérie a son propre style d'artisanat. L'Algérie est une importante destination touristique, puisque si vous visitez l'Algérie, vous aurez droit à visiter nos plus belles villes. Et les visiteurs, les touristes algériens qui viennent en Algérie sont accueillis dans des hôtels touristiques prestigieux. Si vous avez la chance de visiter le Sahara algérien, vous aurez le droit à voir le plus beau coucher du soleil au monde, mais aussi vous allez entendre le bruit du silence. Et je terminerai, donc l'Algérie est un pays à découvrir absolument. Et là, permettez-moi de vous faire quelques propositions pour éliminer les préjugés. Travailler avec des experts en diversité, en éthique et en inclusion. Offrir des formations dans les organismes scolaires sur l'écoute active et l'empathie envers l'autre. Apprendre à nos enfants l'acceptation et le respect de l'autre, peu importe ses origines. Développer des programmes sur l'éducation à la diversité et à la multiculturalité. Au travail, favoriser des dîners de thématiques culturelles. Développer des programmes TV et radio sur le vivre ensemble. Permettre aux différentes communautés de célébrer leurs fêtes importantes en leur octroyant des autorisations d'absence. Dans les espaces communs et de loisirs, installer des outils de communication incitant et rappelant le respect de l'autre et l'entraide entre les individus. Aider financièrement des organismes communautaires dans l'organisation des voyages pour les jeunes dans le but de découvrir les pays du monde et leur culture. Dans les quartiers, installer des comités financés par le gouvernement afin d'organiser des activités sportives et culturelles, ce qui favorise l'échange et la communication